The old cemetery sat quietly on the edge of town, a place most people passed without a glance. But every Sunday morning, rain or shine, a woman in a faded gray shawl appeared at one particular grave. Her name was Martha Green. She was 63, lived alone in a tiny rented apartment, and worked part-time cleaning offices downtown. She didn't have much, a few dollars from each paycheck, a small bag of groceries, and memories that still hurt when she closed her eyes. Each week, she walked to the graveyard carrying a handful of wildflowers, daisies, sometimes lilies when she could afford them. She knelt by the marble headstone that read, "Greater than, in loving memory of Emily Turner. Beloved wife and daughter, 1983-2021. Martha wasn't related to Emily. She'd never met her, but that grave had changed her life. The stranger in the rain. It began 2 years earlier. Martha had lost her own daughter, Claire, to a car accident, a hit and run that no one ever solved. On the day of the funeral, Martha wandered the cemetery after everyone left, too broken to go home. She stopped in front of Emily Turner's grave by accident. The soil was still fresh, the stone polished, and someone had left a single white rose. For some reason, Martha whispered, "Whoever you were, I hope you were loved." Something about the name, Emily, so simple, so peaceful, felt like her own daughter's spirit had led her there. The next week, she brought flowers. Not for Emily, not exactly, but for the love she reminded her of. And so, every week, she returned. The CEO's visit. One cloudy morning, Martha knelt again, brushing dirt from the headstone, arranging fresh daisies. She didn't hear the footsteps until a man's voice said behind her, low and uncertain, "Greater than, excuse me, may I ask what you're doing?" She turned and saw a tall man in a black coat, polished shoes soaked from the grass. His face was tired, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "I'm sorry," Martha said quickly, getting up. "I didn't mean any disrespect. I like to leave flowers." The man's eyes softened. "You knew her?" Martha shook her head. "No, sir, I never met her. I lost my daughter around the same time. I just thought." Her voice broke. For a long moment, the man said nothing. Then he spoke quietly, almost to himself. "Greater than, that's my wife's grave too." Martha blinked. "Your wife?" He nodded. "I'm Daniel Turner. Emily was my wife." Her heart sank. She began to stammer, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't." But Daniel raised his hand. "Please, don't apologize." He looked at the flowers, then back at her. "You've been leaving these every week, haven't you?" She nodded. "It's just something I do. I suppose it makes me feel like someone's remembering her." Daniel's expression changed, the kind of look that's both painful and grateful at once. "No one's visited in months. I moved away after she died. Couldn't bear to come back. But I saw fresh flowers on her grave every time I did. I thought maybe her friends still remembered her." He paused, swallowing hard. "But it was you." A shared grief. They sat on the grass together as the rain began to fall lightly. Daniel told her about Emily, how she loved to paint sunsets, how she volunteered at a shelter, how she'd been the one who grounded his busy life. Daniel was the CEO of a large software company, the kind of man who had more meetings than moments, more money than peace. When Emily died from a sudden illness, he buried himself in work. "She used to tell me," he said, "that kindness doesn't need an audience. It just needs to exist. But I forgot that, until now." Martha smiled sadly. "Your wife sounds like someone my Claire would have loved." He looked at her with quiet respect. "And you sound like someone she'd want me to meet." An unexpected visit. A few weeks later, Martha found something strange when she arrived at the grave. There were 2 sets of flowers, her usual wild daisies, and a beautiful bouquet of white roses wrapped in silk ribbon. A small card was tucked inside. "Greater than, for Emily, and for all the daughters we've loved and lost." It was signed, Daniel. From that day, he started coming with her. Every Sunday. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence, just remembering. But slowly, something began to heal, not just for Martha, but for Daniel too. The letter. One morning, Daniel didn't come. Martha waited, then went home with a quiet ache in her chest. Maybe he'd gotten busy, she thought. Maybe he'd moved away again. A few days later, there was a knock on her apartment door. A young man in a suit stood there, holding an envelope. "Mrs. Green?" he asked. "Mr. Turner asked me to give you this." Inside was a handwritten letter. "Greater than dear Martha, If you're reading this, I'm in the hospital. Nothing serious, just something that made me think about what really matters. I've lived half my life chasing numbers, deals, and deadlines. But the day I found you at Emily's grave, I realized I'd been missing the quiet kind of love she always believed in. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost, humanity. There's one thing I'd like to do. I've created a foundation in my wife's name, to help single mothers and widows. It's called Emily's Garden. The first caretaker will be you. Thank you for teaching me how to remember love, not just loss. Daniel Turner. Martha wept, not from sadness this time, but from a feeling she hadn't known in years, hope. The garden blooms. Months later, the old cemetery looked different. The once forgotten graves were surrounded by flowers, lilies, daisies, and roses, blooming in every color. At the center, a small sign read, "Greater than Emily's Garden, a place of love remembered." Martha tended it every morning, humming softly, her hands gentle as she brushed dew from the petals. Sometimes schoolchildren came to plant new flowers. Sometimes lonely hearts came to talk. And sometimes, when the wind was right, she swore she could hear Emily's laughter, and her daughters too, carried softly between the blooms. The final visit. One spring morning, as she watered the flowers, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "Martha." She turned, and there he was. Daniel, thinner, a little paler, but smiling. "I told you I wouldn't disappear this time," he said. She laughed through tears. "You scared me, you know that." He nodded. "Guess I needed another reminder of what matters most." They stood together, looking at the garden, a place built from grief, love, and something stronger than both. The message. As the sun rose over the graves, Daniel said quietly, "Greater than, funny how kindness works. You gave flowers to someone you didn't know, and now hundreds of people come here to remember the ones they love. You turned sorrow into beauty." Martha smiled. "Your wife helped me do that. Maybe she wanted us to meet." Daniel looked at the sky, eyes glistening. "Maybe she did." They stayed there for a long time, two strangers who'd found family in the most unexpected place. And as the wind moved through the flowers, it carried a message that seemed to whisper to everyone who visited after. Greater than love never leaves. It just changes the hands that carry it.